The old Golf exhaust has had it. Hello Mockbox. Thanks for your help, always appreciated. So this job is to remove 3 sections. We've got the first, second and third sections. The middle one's okay, but the front one and the rear one are blowing. So we're going to do a switch out. Rear section. One, two, and at the back there's a third one. Bit of a fight, but they do come off. Now it's a case of wiggling this off. There is some movement, but I can't film it and do it at the same time. Bit of wiggling and we have freedom. Gotcha. Now it's time for the second box. I suspect as we get further towards the manifold, the more difficult these joints are going to become. The downfold clamp is being stubborn. I've loosened it enough so I can slightly rotate it, so we're going to escalate the violence. Okay, a bit of prying and tapping and I think we've got a bit of movement in this joint now. I think we've broken up the sealant that's on there. So I'm going to risk taking this grommet off and seeing if we can twist it off. Again, filming is very difficult. Okay, so we got the rubber off, that wasn't too much drama. However, this joint here is still not playing ball. So I'm going to use the angle grinder. I'm going to cut a slot further back, see if we can get a bit more wiggle. None of my angle grinders are big enough to cut right through this, and I don't have a reciprocating saw, so I'm just going to see if I can extend this slot and then pry it apart. Slot widened. Quick pry with the screwdriver and suddenly we've got a lot more movement. Yay. One more off. I took the precaution to prop up the next section with axle stands, because otherwise the only thing holding the weight is the exhaust flange gasket, and that could easily get damaged. Okay. This is the one I'm least looking forward to, because this is the hottest part of the exhaust, up to where we're taking off the old stuff. This looks very corroded, like it's joined together, so I think we're going to end up doing what we did on the back box and just cut a slot and see if we can just prise that apart. The metal's quite thin and soft, so it kind of opens itself up quite nicely, but the danger is I don't want to cut into this exhaust downpipe, because we need to keep that as intact as possible. So I've got to be a bit careful. So I've extended the slot with the portable angle grinder. We now have a little bit of movement on the shaft, so hopefully I can twist and knock it off without disturbing the exhaust manifold too much. Yay. It also looks like we didn't actually touch the exhaust downpipe as well, which is good news. Not even a scratch on it. Perfect. There are a few differences. This hump here is slightly shorter than this one. This distance here seems longer than this one. But other than that, they all line up. Also, I've took the time to make sure that these flanges were open properly and that they were a nice sliding fit. When they first came from the supplier, they were a little bit, hello Maggie, a little bit squished, so they needed a little bit of work just to open them up and make sure that they fit properly. Quick dry fit. Having emery cloth this, and I've tweaked this flange slightly wider, and it now is a nice sliding fit. Good. Good. I now have a decision to make. I'd like to dry fit the exhaust before final assembly, just to make sure everything fits properly. So I would like to put exhaust sealant paste on this joint before I clamp it down, but it could be awkward with the exhaust hangers, so we'll see how we get on. So a dry fit shows it should fit. So now that we know that it all goes in, it's time to put some sealant paste on these joints, get it strapped up into place, and then tighten the clamps down, and hopefully then we will have a non-knocking exhaust. I've got to be careful because there's not a lot of clearance at the rear end, so just got to make sure everything's in the right place before we clamp it. Right, that's the exhaust in place. It is all tightened up. There's fire gum in the joints, which is an intumescent paste which expands when it gets hot, seals any of the leaks around the edges of the joints. The rear box is in. We'll take a look from the outside. I'm not 100% happy with the position of the rear box, but it's as good as I can get it. I suppose that's what happens with aftermarket units. Yeah, the position of the rear exhaust, ignore the rust, that's to be dealt with another day. It's very close here. Just wondering if we're going to get some knocking, but that is as good as I can get it. Yeah, it's not ideal, but it isn't actually interfering. Well, she's nice and quiet now. A lot better, a lot less embarrassing than driving it with a blowing exhaust. Okay, so this is I'm 80% pleased with this so far. Obviously I've got to test drive it. I'm going to tidy everything up, take it off the ramps, and then we'll go for a drive. So autopsy on the old exhaust. I think it was blown in a couple of places, but most notably there. I think that was the majority of our noise coming out of that. The problem with this system is if it doesn't get hot, it fills with water, and you know, subsequent short journeys, and it just eventually rots from the inside out. The back box as well, you can see the same sort of thing happening there, just rotting around the weld. It's completely turned to mush, and also actually there's quite a bit of corrosion down here as well, although it doesn't look like it was leaking there. There's definitely signs of soot there. And this box seems to be okay. That one's fine. Right, something for the scrap man.